What's going on, guys? So today I'm going to do probably the first video of a playlist on one of my bolt guns. This is a Savage Model 11 Trophy Hunter XP in 308. This is the left-hand version, as you can tell. Uh, what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to show you how to take out the bolt from the gun. Then I'm going to do a disassembly, clean, and reassembly of the bolt itself. So let's start. To remove the bolt from the newer Savage rifles, you have to do a few things. First thing, you always want to check, make sure your rifle's clear, nothing in the chamber, nothing in the mag. You can put that in or leave it out, it doesn't really matter either way. Next thing you want to do is make sure your gun's on fire. You are going to have to pull the trigger to remove the bolt. Then you need to open the bolt, pull the trigger, and press this little lever that's just outside the trigger guard there. And once you do those, the bolt should slide straight back. So trigger, lever, you can take your thumb off the trigger if you want, and then slide your bolt straight back. And that's that. So now let's get a little bit closer and I'll do a disassembly, clean, and reassembly. Alright, so when you're ready to disassemble your bolt, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to push your cocking pin down to relieve the firing pin. Just like that. The second thing you're going to need is a 1/4-inch Allen key, and you're going to have to unscrew this bolt on the back here. Now the first time you do this, it's going to be ridiculously hard, so much to the point that it feels like you're doing the wrong thing. You're not. It's just tightened down beyond belief. So once you have that off, you can take off the bolt handle and your 3 pieces of your spring. So you have the one piece there, a little ring, and then you actually have the third portion of the spring is holding in the cocking pin, so you're going to have to slide that out of the way, like that. Remove your cocking pin, and then you can just flip it over and take out your firing pin and that third spring. You could take that off. There's really no point to, so I'm just going to leave it on. But you can see that little leg on there holds the cocking pin in place. Then you can continue by taking this thing off. You can just slide it straight off the rear. There's a groove cut into the side of the bolt right here, the bolt body, and that just slides straight off. You're going to want to make sure you put that back on the correct way, the little corner pointing back towards the bolt handle. Next, you can remove the bolt head. To do that, you're going to have to compress this little spring washer in there, and that pin should fall out. If not, give it a little bit of force to push it out. For mine, it just fell straight out. Doing that, you can then remove the bolt head from the bolt body. You have your spring washer and your 2 pieces here. Now on your bolt head, there's still these sub-assemblies, which I'll do now. There's your extractor and your ejector. For your ejector, what you're going to have to do is push out this pin in the back side here. I'm using a 1/16 punch, and you want to make sure that when you do that, you're holding this the actual ejector down, because it's held under by spring tension, so it might pop out at you. So let me get that. And you could usually just push this by hand, but if not, just give it a couple taps with a small hammer. Pushes out. And now remove the punch carefully and make sure that doesn't jump out at you. There you go. And then there's your ejector and your spring. And then for the extractor, this part could be a little bit tricky. I like to use a 3/16 punch. And what you're going to do is you're going to push horizontally. You're just going to slide the extractor off, but there's a spring and a ball bearing under there, so you want to be careful that you don't push those out of the way, or you don't lose those. So just keep your thumb over it and you'll be fine. Just like that. And then the 3 pieces should fall out. There's your ball bearing, your ejector, or your extractor, excuse me, and then your spring. And there's your fully disassembled Savage bolt. Alright, now that you have the bolt disassembled, you can start cleaning it. For this, I'm going to be using some Hops 9 just give it a light coat of oil, not too much. You don't want any dirt binding onto the oil. So what I usually do, I just wipe everything down pretty good, and then after I finish everything, I wipe most of the oil off. So that way it still has a little bit of the actual slick oil finish, but it's not actually tacky. You don't want to be able to feel any of the oil. And it's always good to clean your rifles after you shoot them. I didn't do it last time, but I only put, I don't know, 20 rounds or so through the gun. So that's why I'm just cleaning it now. But it's always good practice to clean right after you shoot. Some key points you might want to look for when you're cleaning. I like to make sure my firing pin is always clean. It's not too important, but I like a clean gun when I shoot. You can also look on your bolt face here and scrape out any crap you'd have along the inside there. Shouldn't be much, but you never know. Wipe down the springs. And again, the springs are a spot where you especially want to keep the oil to a minimum. You don't want any grime binding up your springs. Alright, this will about do it. And then I'm just going to wipe off the excess oil with a new cloth. And it's still going to be a little oily, and that's what you want. You just don't want it so that dirt would get stuck to it, or dust or burnt powder or carbon or whatever else is out there. And then you can start your reassembly. So to reassemble it, you'd pretty much just do the exact same thing you did to take it apart, but in reverse. There are a few things you want to look for when you're reassembling it, but they're not, well, actually they are quite important. So let's jump into it. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put my bolt head back together. So you want to drop your, I'm going to do the extractor first. Drop your spring into the larger hole in the back, or on the side next to that channel. Put your ball bearing over the top of that. And this is probably the most complicated part of the disassembly and reassembly of this, is you have to compress that ball bearing and then slide the extractor over the top of that. So what I like to do, I like to put everything in place first. Your extractor, the little lead should be facing in towards the firing pin. I like to put everything in place. Or not. Sorry if this doesn't really catch on camera. It's kind of hard to manipulate. And then I'm going to push with my thumb, I'm going to push the extractor back on and press down with a punch on the ball bearing. There you go. And you should feel it pop back into place. Next thing I'm going to do is do the extractor. So same thing, start with your spring. This is the hole, the larger hole, not the firing pin hole. Drop that down there. And then you're going to want to pay attention to the orientation of your ejector. There's a little groove cut into the side of it that your pin is going to contain in. It's going to be something like that. So when you insert this, you want to check the alignment of the hole over here to make sure that you can see the groove. So it should be something, let me try to show you on camera here. It should be something like that, relative to the hole in the side, the smaller hole. Then put your pin back, compress the ejector, your pin should fall into place, and then you can let go, and then just push that pin in to align everything, or to center it all. Nothing too precise. And your bolt head's back together. Then you're going to want to slide this second piece on here, Make sure both flat faces are touching the back of the bolt head. Put your spring washer back on there, and then you're going to want to put that all back under your bolt hand or under your bolt body. Now this is the important part. You want to make sure that you align your extractor the orientation that it'll actually eject. If not, you're going to be ejecting the round back into your gun. So if you just put a little bit of thought into it, you can even put your bolt handle back on so you can kind of visualize what's going on here. So I know that when I can read my Savage logo, I'm going to have my extractor facing down where it's still aligned with that hole. For right-handed, it'll probably be the opposite, but double check me on that. I don't have the rifle to confirm. But you can also think about it if you put your bolt handle back on the way it should be. And think of when the bolt is pulled out of the gun, you would pull it up and pull back. And then which way is that casing going to eject? It's going to eject out to the left for me, so I know it's in the right place. If you're right-handed, your bolt would be on backwards and your bolt should be facing like that. So once you know the correct orientation, you have to press the bolt body or the bolt head back down to be able to align this pin to go back in. And the pin here has a hole in it that your firing pin is going to travel through that hole, so you want to make sure it's aligned going along horizontal or going parallel to the shaft of the bolt body. Then you put that in, and you could just relieve tension here and press that the rest of the way in, like so. Then you're going to want to look down the side of it, or through the inside of it, to make sure that you can see daylight through the firing pin hole, which you can, and then you can slide your firing pin back in. Take your firing pin and slide it back down. And it might be a little tough going through at first just because that pin might not be perfectly aligned. It'll just shift it on its own, and then it'll be free moving after that. Excuse me. Next thing you're going to want to do is make sure that spring is pulled back again. It might just fall forward when you're messing with all the parts. Then you're going to want to place your cocking pin back into that hole you see here. Place that in there, and then I like to rotate it to the cocked position just to make sure that the pin's where it should be. It could fall a little bit lower if it's not actually on the ledge here. And then I slide it to the fired position, and you can see where that spring is poking out there. You're going to want to take a punch or something and slide that back into place to contain that pin. Now it's not moving. Now you can finish the rest of your reassembly. You're going to drop the little washer, it's just a cut piece of spring, over the back of the firing pin, and then your main spring will follow that. Then your bolt handle, again another thing you want to make sure is oriented the correct way, which should be like that for me, which it is. And then you can just put your main bolt over the back of that and make sure it's all aligned correctly and screw it back on. Now when you put this back on, well, let me take a step back. When you took it off, it would be tightened down way beyond belief. But when you're reinstalling it, I've done this disassembly and reassembly a dozen times now or so, and I've never had any issues going just beyond hand tight. So right there, it's hand tight. Then I just like to bring it and pretty much put everything I have into it for a second just to make sure that that's on there. Nothing's going to happen if it's looser than spec, because spec is way over the top. Next thing you're going to want to do is put this guy back on. Remember, your little point is going back, so you can slide that into the cutout here where the cocking pin goes. It doesn't slip on really anywhere else. Realign it to your groove cut in the side, and then slide it back on. There you go. And then just twist it around to make sure you have the correct orientation. You'll feel it pop into place there. And then the last thing you have to do before you put it back into the gun is recock this. You can do it by hand, but it's kind of difficult every once in a while. So what I typically will do is take the back end of a punch just to get a better leverage point and push like that. And then put it back in your gun the same way you took it out, by pulling the trigger, pressing the little lever on the bottom, and sliding it in. If it doesn't slide in, then twist the back lug here that's free moving. You more than likely just have it oriented the wrong way because of this little groove here. It has to be able to slide into a notch cut into your receiver. Alright, and that's that. Thanks for watching, guys.